speaking of hearth-warming Eve, did you notice the Greco-Roman design for all things Pegasus? Every building looks like a Roman temple made out of cloud, with Ionic columns and arches and everything. There's actually a building in Cloudsdale called the Cloudiceum, an obvious wordplay on the Colosseum. On top of that, the Pegasi soldiers in hearth-warming Eve wear galliae, those Roman-style helmets with the crests. And the mares wear peploi, Greco-Roman dresses. One Pegasus is even wearing laurel wreaths. The classical influences run deeper than the visual, though. The Pegasus tribe displays signs of certain governmental and social institutions from ancient Greece and Rome. These don't necessarily fall under the category of myth, but since the society in which a myth is told affects the content, they ought to be included in this analysis. First of all, the leader of the Pegasi in hearth-warming Eve is Commander Hurricane. Not Queen or Princess Hurricane, not President Hurricane, Commander Hurricane. This suggests that her key role is as a military leader, not a monarch. That, added to the fact that she represents the entire tribe, along with the prevalence of soldiers in what we see of the old tribe in this episode, suggests a military society. A fitting comparison to Commander Hurricane's status is that of a Roman consul in the Old Republic. A lot of people think a consul was like a president or dictator, but they didn't usually have as much power. A consul was elected by the Senate, which really was just a council of elders, and had two main powers: auspicium, reading the omens and deciding what they meant, and imperium, commanding the army. In times of extreme distress, the Senate could appoint someone dictator, and if that person succeeded in delivering Rome from that distress, they could keep the job for life, since they earned it. This seems to be the most likely scenario for Commander Hurricane. She's clearly a competent military leader and was probably in a consular role. When things started going all Wendigo-shaped, the body of ruling Pegasi elders probably elected her dictator and handed her the reins. Another interesting thing about Pegasus society is a culture of competition, very reminiscent of the classical world. Competition was a huge driving force in the lives of young men in ancient Greece and Rome. In Rome, it was mostly political in nature, but in classical Greece, the young noblemen, called aristoi, or the best ones, grew up in an environment of athletic and social competition. From a young age, they trained in a common place and were constantly compared to their peers. This culture of competition was inherited from Bronze Age Greece, the setting of most Greek heroic myth. All the heroes from those stories were aristoi, the best of the best. In modern Pegasus society, the same environment of competition exists. Pegasus foals are pushed into it as early as junior flight camp, as evidenced in Cutie Mark Chronicles and Hurricane Fluttershy. Later on in life, they're expected to fulfill civic functions like tornado duty as a group. And I can't forget to mention the Equestrian Games. Obviously, that's the pony version of the Olympics. A carryover from ancient Greek culture in our society, and probably a carryover from the Pegasus culture of competition to the rest of the equestrian society. This tendency towards civil duty and athletic tradition also supports the theory that the Pegasi used to have a military society. What are athletics if not military training? You would have to be as blind as Snowdrop not to notice that the Alicorn princesses are divine. At least Celestia and Luna are. They don't just rule over a nation, but over the day and night. That's goddess territory. The original duality of these two as the only such entities was a heavy-handed use of solar mythology, which interprets all myth as a struggle between light and dark. But then Princess Cadence came along, Twilight ascended, and the analysis community had to do some readjusting. But if the origin of the Alicorns as divinities is indeed classical myth, there may be an answer. The similarities between the Alicorns and the Olympian gods are fairly straightforward. Each divinity rules over a specific aspect of the natural and/or civilized world and personifies it. As Zeus is the storm god and ruler of gods and men, so Celestia is princess of the day and the embodiment of harmony. as Hades is god of the underworld, lord of the dead, and the bringer of wealth. So Luna is princess of the night, dreamwalker, and nightmare moon. But this tradition didn't start in ancient Greece. It's a carryover from ancient Mesopotamia, as most classical myth is. That's why the Near East was included in the definition of classical myth at the beginning of the video. A cosmogony is a story of how the present world order came about. The cosmogonies of these two mythological traditions are vastly different in detail, but their fundamental outline is pretty much the same. First, there's chaos. From chaos spring the primal beings, like earth, sea, sky, love, etc. The primal beings bring forth a first generation of gods, which kills its father and subdues its mother. The next generation of gods does the same as the first generation, and just when it seems that the bloody cycle will go on without end, one of the gods comes up with a plan to end it, restores order, and earns the right to rule over everything. After this, the gods divide up the world to determine who will rule what. In Mesopotamian myth, this included which cities they would rule. Every city in Mesopotamia had its own patron deity to whom its temple was dedicated, even though their mythology includes a variety of gods with their own special purview. Perhaps it works more or less the same way in My Little Pony. The princesses are deities in a unified pantheon, but they don't all rule from the same throne, with the exception of Celestia and Luna, who seem to be a 2-for-1 deal. The Celestial Sisters rule over Equestria. Princess Cadance has ruled over the Crystal Empire, which may or may not be a separate kingdom, since it reappeared. There is also speculation that Twilight Sparkle will receive her own nation, or city, to rule. Thus, each divinity will be equal. A potential objection to this theory is that while Celestia and Luna are clearly immortal, there's no reason to believe that this is true of Cadance and Twilight Sparkle. There's no satisfactory answer to this, but perhaps without a kingdom, Twilight Sparkle's apotheosis isn't complete. She hasn't fully realized her destiny, but has one more step to take. Cadance will have taken that step when she restored the Crystal Heart and defeated King Sombra. Maybe she is immortal now. Or maybe the new creative director simply doesn't know what she's doing. Think about it, though. According to this theory, there could be divine rulers of the other nations as well, that take different forms. A griffin king who's also the storm god? A zebra goddess of the wild? A hippocampus queen of the sea? I'd be okay with that.